Hey everyone, welcome back to another hardware news recap for the week. In this one, we have a packed episode talking about all of the big three silicon suppliers. So we've got stories on AMD, Intel, and NVIDIA in the desktop space. Then actually other silicon suppliers too, like Micron and Samsung. On the big three of PC components though, Intel has some cryptic messages now, leading towards its Xe HPG GPUs and its, we're assuming, savior card that will save us all from the GPU shortage of 2021. That is getting detailed sometime soon. They have a scavenger hunt we'll be talking about. AMD and its Epyc Milan CPUs have gotten some additional details now. They're launched. And then on the NVIDIA side, NVIDIA accidentally owned itself. Before that, this video is brought to you by the Thermaltake Tower 100. Thermaltake's Tower 100 is a mini ITX case to serve as a showcase system for your components. The Tower 100 has received many revisions since we first saw it, and the case now has an open vent in the bottom for intake, a mesh cutout in the side panel for some GPU ventilation, and additional mesh along the side skirts and the side panels of the case. The Tower 100 is mostly focused on building a showpiece PC that's small enough to fit on most tables. Learn more at the link in the description below. So first story for this week, Intel and its Xe HPG news. Intel's been slowly releasing some of the information about its upcoming silicon. This is actually, hopefully, a comeback for Intel. Maybe not in GPU, we're not really sure how that'll go yet. But just right now, Intel's done a lot of the correct moves in terms of its staffing. It's changed CEOs, it's changed senior staff of its engineering divisions, and overall looks to be making some of the corrections that it needs. Now, unfortunately, a lot of changes in a silicon company won't really be seen for many years because of the amount of work that goes into building a microarchitecture. But Intel's been doing some of the right things, and hopefully we'll see those moves materialize in a positive way for the company, because we do need some more competition in the space, some more supply in the space, and that goes for both CPUs and GPUs at this point. So in its latest, Intel tweeted a teaser to the gaming architecture, and this is for the architecture specifically related to discrete GPUs, although Xe is in IGPs as well. And Intel has posted what looks like it'll become a cipher challenge, not the rap kind, but the other kind, to decrypt its messages and learn more about the Xe HPG hardware. NVIDIA somewhat famously had a cryptographic set of packages and web pages back for the GTX 10 series launch. That was called the Order of 10. It was actually pretty fun to follow. If we're lucky, Intel will do something similarly interesting for its own cryptic messages. The teaser video started with a binary string hidden in the bottom right corner. We'll tell you what that means. If you don't want to hear what that string decoded to, so that you can solve it yourself, then skip to the next story. So the string was an 8x4 digit string and decoded to 35, 160, 237, 208. It didn't take long for the internet to realize that this is the formatting of an IP address, which, when entered as an IP address into a web browser, definitely a little bit of a risky move, by the way, but someone had to be first. It was worth it. That came back with a redirect to xehpg.intel.com, which says, quote, "Welcome to the XeHPG scavenger hunt," and has a launch date of March 26th, 2021. Now, to be clear, that's the launch date we think of the scavenger hunt, not necessarily of hardware. We'll keep you posted on what happens with it. We'll certainly follow it for next week's news episode. We have no idea if this will be any good or not. We've participated in some in the past from different companies, and sometimes they're way too corny and not actually interesting, and sometimes they're done cryptically enough to be genuinely interesting to follow. So here's hoping that Intel has something promising to deliver in at least its scavenger hunt, if not its product stack. And that's an interesting side point too. There will probably never be a chance as good as this specific timeline that we're in for Intel to launch GPUs. It's coming into a market that's been dominated by basically two vendors, plus sometimes Matrox, for decades now, and Voodoo, I guess, many, many decades ago. But Intel's coming in at a time where AMD and NVIDIA don't really have too much customer goodwill at this point. There's not that much loyalty now because it's more of a everyone for themselves, get the GPU that you can get and move on, finish your system. So that makes it a perfect time for Intel, which has currently no real proven track record for its GPU launch. Now, it's tried some GPUs in the past, and those don't really count. It's also done IGPs, of course, but this is a different type of launch because there's a lot involved with it, like, well, one, proving the hardware, but also proving the software and the driver packages. So it's a good timing. if Intel doesn't fumble this, then they won't get a better chance. So we're definitely looking forward to XeHPG and seeing what it can do. Up next, a quick news story. So this is on the silicon shortages we've been reporting on for months at this point. But we spoke with a couple of industry sources at major board partners and PC component manufacturers and wanted to provide what little of an update we've gotten on the situation. So not great news, but news nonetheless, and we'll see how it materializes. Certainly these rumors have changed constantly. They're transient in their accuracy at this point. But the word we've received right now, word on the street, is that motherboard and GPU board partners are currently expecting supply shortages to ease around Q3, specifically for the Atom board partner video cards of 2021. That is distant, definitely. The current guidance suggests that AMD's silicon is already starting to hit the market, and it's starting to sustain for a little bit longer than the instant it would sell out for previously. So that's looking good for the 5600X, the 5800X. We reported on that last week via PC World. And the higher-end CPUs, the higher-end silicon, should start hitting the market, in theory, soon in a more lasting manner. AMD's silicon supply has been split between a lot of different things, and console makers, that's been a major source of where AMD's supply has been going, because obviously they were trying to hit holiday timelines previously. So anyway, that's the news. More or less, the timeline to look out for video cards is Q3. Now, this, from what the board partners were telling us, is the date that they're expecting to have sustained supply, so meaning more than it restocks and it's gone. There is going to be stock getting added to websites between now and then. So it's not like there's going to be nothing. But it sounds like some of the difficulty of getting a GPU will persist for several months still, which is unfortunate and raises an interesting topic of at what point do you call it quits and say, I'm just going to get the next GPU architecture? Probably some of you have already done that. We've seen that in the comments lately, but let us know what your cutoff is. We're curious to see at what point people go, you know what? Actually, I'm fine with what I have, and I'll wait, versus people who really actually need something as soon as they can get it. NVIDIA wants to celebrate. Last week, NVIDIA was cleared by a federal judge of allegations by shareholders that NVIDIA had been over-reporting its gaming revenue and under-reporting its cryptocurrency-related revenue. We reported on that story last week. And so, in order to celebrate this success in court, NVIDIA has hacked its own drivers and made the RTX 3060 capable of mining Ethereum. Probably not the best first action after walking out of court. But NVIDIA and the RTX 3060, as you likely know, launched with a lot of bombastic fanfare about how it had a firmware and driver handshake, NVIDIA's word, to ensure that the card, the 3060, was unable to mine Ethereum at the full hash rate. In fact, it was supposed to be half of the hash rate. Now, the story at this point splits two different directions. So the first path is the one that everyone went on in the last couple of weeks, where it looks like NVIDIA's 3060 drivers had been hacked or cracked to mine Ethereum at the full rate. But actually what was happening was the card was still capable of mining other cryptocurrencies at the full rate for those, but not Ethereum. What's happened in the time since, though, is NVIDIA decided, well, since it's taking Reddit too long to hack its drivers, it decided it would do so instead. NVIDIA launched beta driver version 470.05 ahead of the usual game-ready launch. NVIDIA often launches unfinished versions of its drivers to get the earliest thing out the door and then patches it over later. In doing so, it accidentally fully unlocked Ethereum mining performance, and that's going to be the end of the Ethereum lock. There's no way to unscrew that screw up. We'd assume that the company had a code branch at some point just before launch to fork protection into drivers and firmware. And perhaps it wasn't grafted into the beta branches. Or maybe for some reason NVIDIA disables it internally. Not sure what that reason would be, and then forgot to re-enable it for the launch. Either way, PC Watch, Computer Base, and Hardware Locks have confirmed that the beta driver did, in fact, remove the block. As would be obvious, this does mean that the Ethereum mining rate is now at full, and anyone who wants to keep using this driver can decide to do so instead of upgrading to whatever they patch it back in with. The next story is about AMD's server CPUs. So the Epyc CPUs in the Milan family came out in the past week or so. AMD announced last week that it would be announcing the new AMD CPUs, as is the nature of the industry now. There's announcements and announcements of those announcements. But as was promised, those did come out. So the new Milan CPUs are in the 7003 series. They are crowned by a 64-core, 128-thread part. This, at this point, has become expected of AMD in its Epyc lineup. And that is the Epyc 7763. We would also expect new Threadripper CPUs at some point. There's nothing confirmed. Actually, not much we've seen in rumors either lately, other than Threadripper Pro. But Threadripper Pro is the same Threadripper that's been out for a while now, except with, for example, 2 times as many memory channels and some other professional level features. But the Epyc CPUs are new, and these run at a base frequency for the 7763 anyway of 2.45 gigahertz and a boost clock of 3.5 gigahertz. The companions to the 7763 are numerous, with AMD launching a total of 19 SKUs in the 7003 lineup. It is targeting the usual 1 and 2 socket server customers for these CPUs. One of AMD's biggest strengths with Epyc is its simplified and non-price segmented feature set, as in everything AMD has to offer with Epyc is on tap. All SKUs offer 128 PCIe 4.0 lanes. They all offer 8-channel memory support, and they all run DDR4 3200. Based on Zen 3, Epyc Milan will also bring a tangible IPC uplift and improved boosting algorithms to extract higher frequencies from the silicon. As with other Zen 3 CPUs, Epyc Milan is manufactured on TSMC's N7 node, and it will use AMD's tried and true chiplet topology, allowing for up to 9 chiplets, or CCDs, to be stitched together. As usual, Zen 3 CCDs span up to 8 cores and are afforded access to 32 megabytes of L3 cache. Milan will use the SP3 socket, and that means that it's backwards compatible and pin compatible with Rome and Naples. AMD noted its partners like AWS, Dell, HPE, Google Cloud, Microsoft Azure, and more will be adopting 3rd Gen Epyc for their own Epyc 7003 based designs. Up next, some interesting pre-built news from System 76. We've talked about System 76 before, normally in the context of it being a Linux system provider, making it a bit more interesting than many of the other SIs or system integrators and OEMs on the market. So System 76 is back in the news. It recently brought out its latest in desktop design. It has a new chassis design, and this is going to be for I think the pronunciation is Thelio Mira desktop. Feel free to comment on what you think it is below, but in some quick searching from pronounced names, which is always a reliable YouTube source, that's what it comes up as. So like the rest of the catalog, System 76 is shipping the Thelio Mira with Linux, either Ubuntu 20.04 LTS or 76's own Pop OS, or version 20.04 LTS Pop OS. And the Thelio Mira is aimed at users seeking a compact workstation that can be configured with AMD's Ryzen 3000 or 5000 CPUs, and with NVIDIA's GPUs. System 76 is offering as low as a GT 1030 at the bottom end of the options, and up to 2 Quadro RTX cards at the higher end, with some RTX 30 cards being offered in between. The Thelio Mira will be configurable with up to 128 gigabytes of dual-channel ECC DDR4 memory and up to 36 terabytes of storage, with multiple M2 PCIe Gen 4 NVMe slots and 2.5-inch bays available as well. Thelio Mira comes with System 76's I/O daughter board, which is an open source I/O board that moves chassis and fan controls from the motherboard to the daughter board, which aligns with System 76's goal, it says, of moving functionality away from what it calls proprietary and closed source hardware. System 76 also contends that this allows for more granular control over fan, storage, and power. The board uses an embedded microchip ATmega 32U4 for the controller, and the design files are hosted on GitHub, so anybody can iterate and improve on them. Also in the news, NZXT for displays this time. So there's a recent job posting that suggests NZXT is looking into hiring someone to manage displays and its movement into the product category. There was a similar posting actually back in about 2018 when Corsair was seeking display PMs and managers to attempt its own. move on displays. MSI, of course, and Gigabyte among the motherboard manufacturers who've gotten into it recently after seeing Asus's years and years of incredible success in the monitor space. The job posting was caught by OC3D.net, and the listing calls for a display or monitor engineering lead. Further, according to the listing, anyone assuming the position, quote, will be responsible for the development and qualification of flat panel displays for desktop monitors and portable products. Portable products here is interesting. That could mean a number of things. Laptops seems unlikely for NZXT, but given that they do have a BLD line, maybe they're planning to buy more Clevo units and rebrand them like a lot of other people do. But laptops are an option, of course. NZXT used to make those 5.25-inch bay displays. Probably not coming back, unfortunately, but they do list portable products. Now, the listing has some specific requirements for the applicant, so if you're considering applying, your resume needs to be fire for NZXT. First of all, you need to have a 15-plus year of experience background in developing display products. NZXT is seeking someone who has shipped 5 or more products and is also looking for someone with an MS or a BS in electrical engineering. This next story is kind of interesting. So Rockstar Games has actually implemented the user-created patch that we talked about in the last couple of weeks in hardware news. There was a mod by a programmer and GTA Online player named Tost, T0ST, who posted a mod that was able to solve some of the game's sluggish loading times, specifically for GTA Online. This was a DLL file, and adding the DLL file could cut the loading time significantly in a way that's actually noticeable, not just measurable. Now, at the time, of course, anyone would speculate as to how seriously Rockstar would take such findings, but surprisingly, and much to its credit, Rockstar's confirmed what Tost found is accurate. Rockstar Games said, quote, after a thorough investigation, we can confirm that player Tost did, in fact, reveal an aspect of the game code related to load times for the PC version of GTA Online that could be improved. As a result of these investigations, we've made some changes that'll be implemented in a forthcoming title update. And as of March 16th, Rockstar has rolled out a patch that implements the findings of Tost. And if the GTA Online subreddit is anything to go by, the results are significant. Additionally, and this is a positive side of the story, Tost confirmed that they also received a $10,000 reward through Rockstar's bug bounty program. According to Tost, Rockstar made a specific exception with the award, as its bug bounties are typically only offered for security-related bugs. So great on Rockstar for doing that, for making an exception, and for paying out for something that it ended up actually using, and it sounds like is affecting the load times meaningfully for a lot of players who were posting on that subreddit, if not all of the players. And of course, from Rockstar's perspective, this does mean more time spent in the game and potentially more money spent as well, so it should benefit everybody. Up next, Qualcomm completing its Nuvia acquisition. The time card over there doesn't say NVIDIA, it says Nuvia. We had this problem a couple weeks ago where there were a couple of comments where people thought that Qualcomm was buying NVIDIA, but it is in fact Nuvia. So as expected, Qualcomm has closed its acquisition of the silicon and CPU design company Nuvia. Qualcomm shelled out $1.4 billion for the acquisition, and it seems that this will afford it the opportunity to some extent, combat Apple, and where competing maybe ARM. It might also take another shot at the server market as a result. Qualcomm's Snapdragon SoCs have lived in the shadow of Apple's A-series SoCs for years now, and Qualcomm's custom designs have never strayed too far from vanilla ARM designs. Now, Qualcomm has wasted no time in stating its immediate intent to address high-performance laptops. Quote, the first Qualcomm Snapdragon platforms to feature Qualcomm Technologies' new internally designed CPUs are expected to sample in the second half of 2022 and will be designed for high-performance, ultra-portable laptops, said Qualcomm in its press release. Additionally, Qualcomm will leverage its Nuvia acquisition to design in-house silicon for flagship smartphones, it says, laptops, and digital cockpits, as well as advanced driver assistance systems, extended reality, and infrastructure networking solutions, end quote from Qualcomm. As a reminder, Nuvia was founded by former Apple A-series architects John Bruno, Manu Gulati, and Gerard Williams III. Nuvia never actually released a product before getting Qualcomm's attention, but the company was working on custom silicon for servers and HPC applications. It was no doubt the engineering pedigree of Nuvia's founders that got Qualcomm's interest, and as noted by Qualcomm's press release, Gerard Williams is now serving as Qualcomm's SVP of Engineering. Our next story talks about a company whose name we can't say more than 3 times in a video for fear of the algorithm plunging us into oblivion. And that's Google's lawsuit, or rather Google getting sued over incognito mode, specifically a $5 billion lawsuit that we talked about back in June of 2020. And that's come back around. The lawsuit is leaning on Google allegedly violating the Federal Wiretap Act and intentionally deceiving users. For its part, Google tried to have the case dismissed on the basis that Chrome support documents allegedly make it clear that, quote, activity might still be visible. According to Bloomberg and Ars Technica, Google was unable to convince the courts, and the lawsuit will move forward. Quote, the court concludes that Google did not notify users that Google engages in the alleged data collection while the user is in private browsing mode, according to U.S. District Judge Lucy Koh. As usual, Google disputes this claim and has vowed to vigorously defend itself. The lawsuit seeks at least $5 billion in damages, apparently up to $5,000 per affected user. Don't get your hopes up. Probably get a penny in the mail like I did from the last Google class action. And the suit is retroactively targeting any user that has used Chrome, specifically incognito mode, since June 1st of 2016. I never claimed that penny from Google in the previous class action, by the way, so that I can frame it as a show of dominance on our wall. So, Micron exiting the 3D XPoint business in the next one. A few years ago, Micron and Intel announced a joint venture into 3D XPoint, and not long after that announced that they would be splitting it up. The plan was to work together to develop 3D XPoint memory as a concept for an evolution of NAND flash and DRAM with theoretically higher endurance, performance, and density. Intel branded its 3D XPoint as Optane, while Micron went on to brand its own 3D XPoint product as QuantX. However, none of Micron's QuantX products ever shipped, with the exception of Micron's X100 SSD that shipped to select data center customers. In the time since, Micron has decided to abandon the 3D XPoint business entirely. The company says that there's, quote, insufficient market validation to justify the ongoing high levels of investment, and it also says that, in line with this new strategic focus, Micron is engaged in discussions for the sale of its Utah fabrication facility, currently dedicated to 3D XPoint production. It says that it aims to reach a sale agreement within the year of 2021. Micron also said that going forward, it hopes to focus its development efforts on CXL, the Compute Express Link. We've covered it a few times now. This is something that Intel probably isn't keen on getting on board with, as Optane is proprietary and exclusive to Intel CPUs. With Micron exiting the 3D XPoint business, there was some speculation on what that would mean for Intel, as Micron has been producing memory for Intel's Optane products for a while. Tom's Hardware spoke to both Micron and Intel and received the following statements. Micron said that it's committed to completing its current obligations for the existing wafer supply agreements, and it says that it will retain all of its intellectual property associated with 3D XPoint. Intel says that Micron's announcement doesn't change its strategy for Optane or its ability to supply Intel Optane to its customers. And finally, some discussion on TSMC and AMD becoming TSMC's second largest customer, or it very soon will anyway. TSMC and Samsung are currently locked in a spending battle. Back in November of 2020, Bloomberg reported that Samsung plans to spend $116 billion to bolster its manufacturing capabilities in an effort to catch up to TSMC by 2022. This includes expanding the development of GAA FET transistors, which we've been talking about a lot lately. As we said previously, Samsung intends to use GAA FETs, or its multi-bridge channel FETs, MBC FETs, at 3 nanometers, while TSMC is looking at still using FinFETs. At the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers' recent International Solid-State Circuits Conference, for acronym enthusiasts, that would be the IEEE ISSCC, Samsung recently demonstrated the performance and power efficiency improvements that it could accomplish with GAA FETs and SRAM. Just to complicate things. Seeking Alpha reports that TSMC currently holds an advantage over Samsung in both the production capacity and revenue, as well as a broader customer base for contract chip making. TSMC apparently has an overall 2.3 times greater capacity than Samsung, and Samsung, for what it's worth, has been working on closing the gap, brought down from a 3.3 times capacity back in 2016. Furthermore, industry estimates have the customer base of both companies as disparate. Samsung's is 60% self-made products for its own devices, like Exynos SoCs for Samsung's smartphones. Meanwhile, TSMC serves 460 customers, including Apple, HiSilicon, AMD, NVIDIA, Broadcom, Qualcomm, and Intel, among others. And speaking of those customers, AMD is on track to become TSMC's second largest customer. Currently, they are at 9.2% of TSMC's estimated 2021 revenue. Apple, in an easy first, at over 25. It's about 25.4% of TSMC's 21 estimated revenue. AMD will be ahead of other prominent customers in this position, clearly, including NVIDIA, Qualcomm, and Intel, which is a minor customer for TSMC right now. That's it for hardware news this week. Thanks for watching. As always, you can subscribe for more. Go to store.gamersnexus.net to grab one of our GN teardown toolkits or our mouse mats, and you can go to patreon.com/gamersnexus for extra videos. We'll see you all next time.